Hey, y'all. I hope you're doing well and having a great day. We are really going to spend some time unpacking the writing process. Now, most of you probably feel that you either know the writing process or you've heard that terminology before. But really, what I want to share with you the most is your ability to create your own writing process and what that looks like and how. Really individualized that plan should be. So let's start before we even talk about process. We have to really consider two ideas. And that first idea that we have to talk about is purpose. What is the purpose of your writing? And this really pertains to your end goal and what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to achieve. So, a few common purposes that people talk about, one may be to inform or to teach. Another might be to argue a certain concept. You might be comparing and contrasting a couple things, which ultimately would lead to some sort of argument. You might be just trying to entertain someone, or you might be trying to show why or how something occurs through a cause and effect analysis. So, those are just a few things that you might consider when you're thinking about this big word called purpose. The second thing that you're going to be thinking about is audience. Who is your audience? And this pertains to the people that you are trying to reach through your written work. And that should really determine how you're writing and through what method. And that really plays into the vernacular or the diction that you will be using. So let's talk about what really is the writing process. What is the breakdown? The writing process is the process that you use when you're working on a paper. And this process looks different for everyone. But what's really important is to establish what works for you. So your writing process may look very different, or it might look similar to the person next to you. The process is broken down into a few main parts that I really want to talk to you about today. The first one is planning, and planning can typically mean brainstorming or outlining. What this means is when your teacher assigns you a written work, you are going to take some time to really sit down and come up with the ideas that you want to present. And guys, brainstorming is a time when you are not just getting out your good ideas, but you're also really fleshing out your bad ideas. You may think that you know exactly what you want to write in a paper. And then when you start really sitting down and fleshing out that brainstorming and starting to outline your topics, what you may realize is, wow, I really don't have enough to write about. Or I don't think I can give enough of a valid argument for this particular topic. And that's okay. That's what brainstorming's for. And it's such an important part of the process because it prevents you from putting too much skin in the game and really using your time to write before you get to that point. And so you can U-turn and look at some different ideas and see what maybe would cultivate a better paper. Drafting is when you are creating what I like to call a crappy first draft. There's a great article by Anne Lamott, and she talks about just the essence of getting something down on paper. Revising and editing is what comes next. And this is when you're working with a writing community, you're going through a checklist, you're visiting the writing center, and you're reading out loud to hear the mistakes that you've made. And guys, revision is especially a critical component. This is when you're going to go through the organization of your paper, the cohesion, you're looking at topic sentences, and you're really trying to investigate, do I have a really strong idea here? Does the organization make sense? Do my topics relate back to my thesis statement? Is this fluid? Do I really have my audience nailed down? And am I using the right kind of language and syntax that indicates that audience? Editing is more the small changes that need to be made. These are missing commas, punctuation, run-on sentences. And while those are, of course, important concepts and something we want to think about, it doesn't have as much power as the power of revision does. So I always want you to remember that revision is the most important thing that you'll do after you draft a paper, but editing still matters and always will. Polishing is that last time that you go back through and you just finish those small touches, you read each sentence aloud, you check for those little mistakes that you might be making consistently, and then finally submit your work on time, publish the work, get it in, and be confident that you've used a process that works for you to get your final outcome. So let's talk about brainstorming. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but brainstorming is really the time when you are getting your good ideas and your bad ideas out on paper. And it's a step that a lot of students want to skip because they don't see the importance and they feel like they're wasting their time, quite frankly. But it is important. It's important to explore all of your ideas to ensure that you really are going to write about the best idea. So let's do a little exercise together. And you can do this from your home, but I want you to take the time and imagine that you're getting ready for a race. So take 1 minute and you can either write it down or you can act it out, whatever you're comfortable doing. But I want you to imagine that you're getting ready for a half marathon. So let's talk about what you came up with. Some of you might still be sitting back in your chair because you're like, I would never sign up for a half marathon, so I'm doing nothing. And that's an idea. Some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I need to start drinking more water. Some of you might start stretching and warming up your muscles. But what I'm trying to prove here is you all have different methods, right? Some of you are going to focus way more on your hydration and your diet, while others of you are really worried about pulling a hamstring. And here's the deal. None of those things are necessarily right or wrong. They're just different based on what you know and what works for you. And that's a whole lot like brainstorming and writing. Some of you are going to do free writing and you're going to sit there and you're going to write everything out and brain dump on the paper. Some of you are artistic people and you might draw a picture. Some of you might like diagrams and webs, and that really helps you focus. And some of you just throughout your day may note take on your phone or on your hand or on a piece of paper. And guys, the important thing is to figure out what works. And like I said, that's going to look different for every single one of you. So now I want to talk a little bit about outlining. And again, this is one of those steps that a lot of people kind of skip out on because they don't see the importance. But you are going to do an outline for every paper this semester because I really want to prove to you the importance of what outlining really is. For the purposes of this course, that will typically give you a document to go by with a certain layout that allows you to easily plan your essay. But what I want you to understand is in future courses, you have an opportunity to make your own outline. So once you start really coming up with those topics, you can sketch your own outline so that this is a process that is transferable for you. And you're not just using it here in English 111, but you can take the fundamentals. And even if your teacher doesn't give you an outline, you will then know how to create an outline. Outlining really helps students organize their topics, create supporting details, and see what works before they ever dive into an essay. So I want to share a little YouTube with you guys that I think you'll find helpful. Bear with me for just a second, please.
For many people, making an outline is an important part of the writing process. Outlines can help you to see the big picture of your paper and to decide how to arrange your ideas. Let's imagine you are working on a paper that has asked you to advertise an advertising campaign. You've chosen to focus on an ad for your favorite snack food. You've researched your topic and brainstormed plenty of ideas, but you aren't sure how to organize them. So you decide to try making an outline as a way of exploring your options. When you are just getting started, here are some questions you might ask yourself. Do some of the ideas naturally cluster together? How many clusters are there? Which ideas are more important or general? Which ones are more like supporting details? What order should the ideas be in? What order would be best? Once you have answered these questions, you are ready to draft an outline. Try putting the biggest ideas at the top level and the details below them. As you look at your outline now, are there parts that don't seem to fit? Are you repeating yourself? If so, is that helpful? Or is it not? Do you have enough details to support each of your main ideas? Is anything missing? Are you happy with the order you've chosen? Or do you want to rearrange some things? Outlines don't have to look just like this. There are many ways to represent relationships between ideas. Your outline could take the form of a map, or a timeline, or a flowchart. You could write your ideas on note cards or post-it notes and try out different arrangements. Or you can make a PowerPoint presentation of your ideas. As you arrange your slides, you will be organizing your paper. Try some of the different kinds of outlines and see what works best for you and your current writing project.
The big game and Valentine's Day shouldn't go together.
So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was helpful for you guys. And like the video said, outlining is truly a good way to get your best fundamental ideas down in an organized way before you write your paper. So now let's kind of hit on drafting. And again, at this point, guys, you've already gone through two parts of the process. You've brainstormed, you've outlined, and that really includes the planning portion. And now you're going to be drafting. And the big thing is get it down on paper. I cannot express this to you enough. This is not the time to be concerned with small issues. This is where you consider the larger scale issues. Organization, paragraph formation, and most importantly, the parts of your essay. You're asking yourself, do I have an introduction? Do I have body paragraphs? And do I have a conclusion? I like to call this the crappy first draft in honor of Anne Lamott because I don't want students to be bothered with perfect writing. This is not the time to create perfection. It's simply the time to make sure that you have the content and the amount that you need to really get your purpose across. And then revising, editing, and polishing. And the big thing to keep in mind is revising and editing should take you some time. This is when you go through your paper and you ask yourself questions that should help you reflect and improve your paper. Do I have each part of an essay? Do I have a thesis statement? Do my topic sentences allow me to transition? And are those topics strong? Do I have supporting ideas for each topic? And is this paragraph well-rounded? Did I answer the prompt fully? Does my organization make sense? And again, guys, these are just a few of the questions you should be asking yourself. But what I want you to notice is these are your big key components. This is what helps you really understand the fundamentals of making sure that all the important pieces of the paper are present. This can often take form in a writing center, a writing community group of students that you trust and that you want to share your writing with, meeting with your instructor, or even just reading your essay out loud to a family member or a friend who lives with you and asking them if the message is clear and if you really developed what you were trying to say in a good way. Remember that this should not be a rush process. Guys, this can take hours. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you're meeting your deadlines of brainstorming and outlining so that once you get to this place, you don't feel so rushed. At this point, all the major components should be present. And then polishing is the final step before publishing. After you've gone through and made every single change and you've worked with other people and you feel confident about what you've done, read it one more time before submission. These should only be small changes like commas or a capitalized word or accidentally finding a second person pronoun like you or your that needs to be interchanged. And these should take minutes. This should not be a long process towards the end because you've already done the hard work by that point. And then finally, publishing, which is probably what students are the most excited about. Submit your essay on time. Remember, for the purposes of this class, every day that you turn it in late is a letter grade that you've missed out on. So to give yourself the best chance of making the kind of grade you want, just get it in on time. Consider what worked about your process. It's really important to reflect after you turn in a paper and figure out, what techniques did I use that were helpful? Did some help more than others? What didn't work for me as a writer? It's important to reflect so that you make sure that you have an even better experience the next time that you write. And guys, reflection helps us evolve. It helps us figure out what changes we need to make. And this is important in writing. This is important in life. And figure out, what is my process? And then if you need to tweak it, then you have the opportunity to do that the next time that you write. So at this point, you've learned all about the writing process, and you probably feel like I've completely brain dumped on you. But this is going to be something that we are doing together all semester long. We're going to be brainstorming together. We're going to be outlining together. We're going to be looking at drafts together. We're going to be revising and editing and getting our papers in on time. But what this requires, y'all, is this really important concept called growth mindset. And so a few things about growth mindset. A person who has growth mindset is someone who sees the potential in themselves to constantly grow and evolve. So you might be saying things like this: I can learn anything that I want to. When I'm frustrated, I can persevere. I want to challenge myself. When I fail, I learn. Tell me I try hard. If you succeed, I'm inspired. My effort and attitude determine everything. These are words from people who really have a desire to grow and learn, even if they don't get it right the first or the 10th time. People who have fixed mindsets, you might hear them saying things like this: I'm either good or I'm not. When I'm frustrated, I just give up. I don't like to be challenged. When I fail, I'm no good. Tell me I'm smart. If you succeed, I feel threatened. My abilities determine everything. Guys, throughout the semester, you're going to hit roadblocks and you're going to hit challenges, and that is totally okay. But the important part is, with everything you do, you should have a desire to take the opportunity to grow. So if you get feedback that you don't like, take the time to meet with me. Give me a phone call, set up a Zoom session, come by my office, and let's talk about how you can grow in that area. If you're stumbling with your outline and you're not sure if your topic sentences are strong, visit the Writing Center, get some feedback. Everything that you do is an opportunity to grow. So I want to share this growth mindset YouTube with you guys. It really altered a lot of my own personal thinking just about what it meant to have growth mindset. And I think that you will find that it's super helpful for you too.
Today, I want to tell you about the power of yet. I learned of a high school in Chicago where students had to pass 84 units.
Okay, here we go.
Today, I want to tell you about the power of yet. I learned of a high school in Chicago where students had to pass 84 units to graduate. And if they didn't pass, they got the grade not yet. I thought, isn't that wonderful? Because if you fail, you're nowhere. But if you get the grade not yet, you're on a learning curve. Not yet gave them a path into the future. And not yet also helped me understand a critical experience early in my career. To figure out how kids coped with challenge, I gave 10-year-olds some problems that were a little too difficult for them. Some of them reacted in a shockingly positive way. They said things like, "I love a challenge," or "I was hoping this would be informative." They understood that their abilities could grow through their hard work. They had what I call a growth mindset. But other children, for them it was tragic, catastrophic. From their more fixed mindset perspective, their core intelligence had been tested and devastated. Instead of the power of yet, they were gripped by the tyranny of now. So, what did they do next? In one study, after a failure on a test, they said they'd cheat next time instead of study more. In another study, they found someone who did worse than they did so they could feel better. And in many studies, we found they run from difficulty. Let's look at how that looks in the brain. Mosher and his colleagues measured from the brain as kids encountered errors. Processing the error shows up in red. If you look at the fixed mindset brain on the left, nothing is happening. But if you look at the growth mindset brain on the right, it's on fire with yet. They're processing the error deeply, learning from it, and correcting it. So, how are we raising our kids? Are we raising them for now or for yet? Are they focused on the next A or test score instead of dreaming big, instead of thinking about what they want to be and how they want to contribute to society? And if they are too focused on A's and test scores, are they going to carry this with them into the future? Maybe because many employers are coming to me and saying, we've already created a generation of young workers who can't get through the day without an award. So, what can we do? How can we build that bridge to yet? First, we can praise wisely. Our research shows that when we praise kids for the process they engage in, their hard work, their strategies, their focus, their perseverance, they learn that challenge seeking, they learn that resilience. Praising talent, praising intelligence makes them vulnerable. There are other ways of rewarding yet. We teamed up with game scientists at the University of Washington to create a math game, Brain Points. The typical math game rewards right answers right now, but not brain points. We rewarded process and the learning curve, so effort, strategy, and progress. The Brain Points game created more sustained learning and greater perseverance than the standard game. And just the words yet and not yet after a student has a setback, we're finding creates greater confidence and greater persistence. We also can change students' mindsets directly. In one study, we taught students that every time they pushed out of their comfort zone to learn something really, really hard and they stuck to it, the neurons in their brain could form new, stronger connections, and over time, they could become smarter. Those who learned this lesson showed a sharp increase in their grades. Those who did not showed a decrease. We have done this with thousands of students now across the country with similar results, especially for struggling students. So let's talk about equality. In our country, there are groups of kids who chronically show poor performance, and many people think that's inevitable. But when educators create growth mindset environments steeped in yet, equality can happen. Let me just give you a few small examples. One teacher took her Harlem kindergarten class, many of whom could not hold a pencil for the first month, through daily tantrums. She took them to the 95th percentile on the National Achievement Test. That same teacher took a 4th grade class in the South Bronx, way behind. She took them to the top of New York State on the state math test. That teacher is a Stanford grad, and she's here today. And another Stanford grad, a PhD student, Stephanie Freiberg, now a professor, went back to her Native American reservation in the state of Washington. She transformed the elementary school in terms of a growth mindset. That school had always been at the bottom of the district, at the bottom of the state. Within a year to a year and a half, the kindergartners and first graders were at the top of the district in reading and reading readiness. That district contained affluent sections of Seattle, so the reservation kids outdid the Microsoft kids. And they did it because learning a growth mindset transformed the meaning of effort and difficulty. It used to mean they were dumb, and now it means they had a chance to get smarter. Difficulty just meant not yet. Last year, I got a letter from a 13-year-old boy. He said, "Dear Professor Dweck, I read your book already." I like the fact that it was based on sound scientific research. That's why I decided to test out your growth mindset principles in 3 areas of my life. As a result, I'm earning higher grades. I have a better relationship with my parents. I have a better relationship with the other kids at school. I realize I've wasted most of my life. Let's not waste any more lives, because the more we know that basic human abilities can be grown, the more it becomes a basic human right for kids, all adults, to live in environments that create that growth, to live in environments filled, overflowing with yet. Thank you.
So guys, I hope this was helpful and that you have an even better understanding of the importance of growth mindset and how that pertains to the writing process. This process is difficult. Make no beans about it. Writing a paper, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, and cultivating an audience based off this purpose you're trying to get across in this message, and doing it with the right syntax and the right diction and the right place to put a comma is hard. But you can grow those skills and you can develop. And anytime that you run into a roadblock, I want you to have a mindset of not yet. I don't know this yet. And I think together, if we carry that kind of mindset and it helps us communicate and it helps you ask good questions, then I think you're going to learn a lot. I hope this was helpful. And again, we're going to be unpacking the writing process all semester long. So if you have any questions about this particular lecture, please, please, please be sure to ask those great questions. And it will help us as we go on to do each essay this semester. And it's something that will transfer for every essay and every written work that you will write for the rest of your lives.